You are now tuned into the 2-Minute Warning, a live stream community conversation pertaining to social and political issues and how we can collectively resolve them. Powered by the Westside Gazette.
Well, good evening and welcome to the 2-Minute Warning. My name is David Wright, and I'll be sitting in for our dear host, Brother Perry Busby, who should be joining us here shortly. But I just want you to know that the 2-Minute Warning is brought to you by none other than Broward's biggest, boldest Black family-owned newspaper, the Westside Gazette. And here with me this evening is the editor of the Westside Gazette, Mr. Bobby R. Henry C.
Yeah. You know, I get called a lot of things, and you know, so I'm accustomed to that because being a Black man in America, you got to do a lot of jobs. So, and you just giving me another job. So I am truly, well, I'm up for the task, brother David. I am terrific and getting better. And to those of you who are joining us, thank you so very much. We certainly appreciate it. It's a brand new year.
Brand new year.
And we want to do some brand new things.
Absolutely. Yes.
But our cohort out on the other side of the country experiencing some technical difficulties. That part of the country must be under some kind of weather conditions, because our traveling, roving host, where is he?
Coast to coast.
Coast to coast. Yeah.
So he's in Arizona right now, and they've had some serious weather, some rain, and the chill. He was telling me it's gone from like 30s in the 30s.
Yeah, the brother was talking
40s.
About. Can you imagine your faucet freezing?
Yeah. Well, it happens, you know, in other areas where they're accustomed to the freeze. You would think out in the desert area it would be such a big issue, but yeah.
But yeah, he's dealing with those conditions. I guess being a traveling man, you need to expect a whole lot of unexpected stuff. Huh?
But I must say, our brother's well versed. He's on top of things.
He's on top of things.
Yeah, it's good. He'll be joining us shortly. But what do you got on your plate, man, in 2024? There's a lot of new things going on, and then there's a lot of the same old stuff going on.
And you know, David, I was caught by surprise when I was reading an article about a situation in Jackson, Mississippi. Just when you thought it was safe to go back into the water, here in Jackson, Mississippi, there were 215 bodies found where they were discovered buried in an unmarked grave, were graves behind the state jail. You know, I mean, 215 bodies. Obviously, well, they were not all Black. I saw a picture of the families who were standing with Attorney Benjamin Crump, and the brother who actually brought this to light was a brother by the name, he's an activist, and his name is Arthur Silky Slim. You know, so you got a brother working with one of the best attorneys in the country, and brother Benjamin Crump, to bring this situation to light.
How many bodies?
215. That's just that is just the beginning. We hope that there are no more, but again, it is the beginning. And had not the brother who was recently, I'll just say recently died in that jailhouse, his name was Dexter Wades. When Dexter's death occurred, they put him in an unmarked grave. They didn't tell the family, but fortunately, Dexter had some ID on him, so that created the whole snowball effect. And so here we are now, a couple of days later into this thing, 215 deaths.
Now, was Dexter the guy whose heart was missing?
Well, now you got me on that one.
Yeah, there was some an inmate that once the family had the body exhumed, they found that he was missing some body parts.
And this report says the detective claimed to have called without receiving an answer and took no further action. Reed says the situation in Mississippi is so deeply troubling with 6 additional bodies now discovered in similar unmarked graves. Reed described the grim scene at the burial site where buzzards flew overhead. The bodies were placed in shallow graves without an embalming, leading to a disturbing smell. Wow. So that really took me off guard.
Yeah, in 2024.
2024.
We'd be beyond some of this. So listen, we had talked about doing a show in reference to what's going on in Mississippi. Nina Simone sang a song many years ago, and I think this falls in line with some of the lyrics of her song. But at some point, I think it'd be fitting for us to do a little more in-depth insight on what's happening in that.
Nina Simone song.
That
Mississippi?
Yeah,
that's it. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
There's something else interesting, and I would like to have Attorney Barbara Anwine on the show to talk about this in detail. The landmark Voting Rights Act is really under attack, and the 8th District, the Supreme Court, they're trying to do away with the ability for anybody to sue anything that does with voting rights. I mean, if you went to vote and they told you couldn't, they didn't give you a reason, or they just disenfranchise you, you can't. If this law passed, you can't sue. Yeah, so nothing involves with your voting rights. You as a citizen can't sue. No organizations, the NAACP who fights for our rights, they can't ACLU. It will be a mess. That's all I can say about that now. But there are individuals who can actually, you know how they go. You got professionals that deal with that. So,
yeah, we need to stay vigilant about this one because, again, it's very devastating in the event that our voting rights are not being respected or not being honored, and there's no repercussion, no recall as to getting justice. So absolutely, which really circles back to some of the things we'll be talking about later on in the show. But a lot of stuff going on here locally. This is we're embarking on the Martin Luther King Jr. weekend, and there's so many events going on as always with the parade and the day of service, as well as the celebration that the Alphas do every year over Mount Olive. New Mount Olive Baptist Church. This is the 48th year that they'll be doing the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. celebration. Yeah.
So you're telling me that Judge Robinson, what's the other brother, the big brother that used to sing in the choir? What's his name? So they've been doing this for over 48 years.
They've been doing this for over 48 years. Attorney Allen was really big when this started as well. But one of the guest speakers for that event is Everett B. Ward, PhD. I've heard great things about this individual, being comrades with our former President Barack Obama. And as you say, Judge Robinson speaks so highly of them. That event is going to be 4:00 at the New Mount Olive Baptist Church. There's also a day of service that's going to be at Sunland Elementary School. That's going to be on Saturday, the 12th at the 13th. I'm sorry, Saturday the 13th from 9 to 4. So a day of service. We really encourage you to give back on this auspicious weekend. I mean, enough with the partying and all of that. We're going to do that, but this is truly about a day of service. And then obviously the parade again is on that Monday.
And what was it that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said? Anybody can be great because everybody can serve. So let's live up to that part. Now, see, we got our partner back.
Hello and Happy New Year, my brothers, and to the 2-minute warning listening family. Glad to be here. Just had some slight technical glitches here. The power flipped out for a second, but we all okay.
All right.
So
all
great.
Right.
Yeah. So
you staying warm out there? I see you got your skull cap on. You staying warm?
Yeah, staying warm. Yeah, we got a hard freeze warning for tonight.
Mhm.
This is pretty much the cold stretch here in southern Arizona. This is, I guess, maybe the coldest time of the year. So yeah, so we're dealing with some cold
Mhm.
weather, but yeah, we're doing fine. So yeah, but enough of that. Let's get going, man. I'm happy to be here. Happy to hear about what's going on. So uh, let's continue. Okay, so we're
Okay.
talking about MLK. Where are we going now?
Well, you know, you keeping us informed with that. Um, Man, I almost said alien situation.
Immigration,
Yeah,
the
and
immigration situation. Yeah,
not only immigration, but at the border,
yeah.
what's happening?
Yeah, and man, I was thinking about that earlier. I hope, and I'm not going to guarantee it, but I do hope that maybe we can do a show where we get some people, uh, uh, because there is a wide community of people, uh, nonprofit organizations who have committed their lives to being the welcoming committee at the gate, with
Mhm.
there being so many things going on with migrants, uh, there are several community organizations who are there to greet migrants as they enter into the United States, and in some cases let them sleep over for days or two to help them get themselves navigated, but to provide food, nourishment, or whatever they need. So man, when you see that, I mean, it really truly makes those of us of the Christian upbringing and belief of being uh that person who's there, that good Samaritan who's there to help that person in their most dire part of, time of their life. And like I said, I mean, to really hear the migrant story, people who've come from Ukraine, Russia, Senegal, Morocco, places that we haven't heard where there is civil unrest, and we talk about the murder on American streets, but the murder that's happening in their villages. And so they're escaping for their lives and seeking, better way of life. And so, like I say, the closer you get to hear this story about migration in a much different light that definitely you know I don't think you can walk away feeling the same and just having, depending on whichever side of the argument you own. When you hear the people here talk about migration, it's not about the people, it's about the process, because again, both sides are talking about closing down the border. Well, that sounds good, but if you close the borders, you kill certain towns and their economic engine that's connected to that. So it's easy to say it on one end, but it's another thing when you see it up close. So
And
I
Perry,
hope we can spend some time on that, because it has really become an interesting thing for me to follow.
And Perry, this country really wants to cherry pick the people they allow into this country, and I think it's based on economics and skill sets. But based on what you're saying, what they're seeing now is a variety of all sorts of skill sets at the
Yeah,
border.
and economic and people from economic levels. Like I said, when we say migrants, we think people who are in tattered clothes. We're
Mhm.
not seeing people in tattered clothes coming over. We're seeing some well dressed families who are coming over. Man, I'm not saying that the shoes are signed. They, they've traveled thousands of miles, but you can tell they were people of some means.
Mhm.
And so, despite what, Trump wants to say about their sending, the rapists and their, and the murderers. We're not. You don't see that among these people.
And Perry, you said something earlier, and I just want to go back. Um, you know, even though we're centered based on our God, there are those who perhaps don't worship the same God we do, but they feel, and I don't want us to alienate anybody when it comes to
Right.
be doing good for others. Because by the grace of God, there we go.
Go ahead. Right.
And
Right.
and so I want us to really understand it's all about us as a people.
Yeah.
We're in this thing. And some of the stories that you told us about, man, it's really heartbreaking that it's right here at our borders. We don't have to go way outside to those places, Ukraine and Gaza. We got it. We're dealing with it right here. So
Yeah. And like I say, as my father used to tell me, the best sermon you'll ever experience is the sermon you see, not the one you hear. And so to see these people who and I you don't ask if they're Christian. I'm just saying those who
I got you.
who are based in the Christian faith and profess, these are the people who are at the gate to meet the downtrodden. So so it just says you can do something at any level, and it's always needed. I've never met a person turn downhill.
All right.
Well, and saying all that, guys, it's about time for us to bring our guest on. I want our viewers to just go ahead and start chiming in. They can start liking and sharing and all of that good stuff that we do here on the 2 Minute Warning. But I was gonna let Brother Busby.
Sound good to me.
This is his call.
This is right down his alley.
This is his call. So
this is right down his alley.
We're gonna hand it over to you.
Yeah. No, I'm excited to have this brother join us tonight. As I say, I make no bones about it. I knew Joe Scott before he was supervisor of election. And the guy I met before the supervisor of election was a guy I'm proud to support as supervisor of election, someone in this pivotal position. Joe Scott is from South Florida. He's a West Point grad. He served faithfully in our military and played some pivotal roles. And one role I know he is proud to speak on is the role of ensuring that our servicemen and women participated in the election process. And so to help oversee that, our troops were not overlooked even when they were serving in foreign lands, that he took that responsibility on. And so, we start in 24 and you guys know, I said, this is a year we can't hold any punches when it comes to voting and what this election cycle means for us and to us. And I just so glad that we were able to get him to, take time out of his busy schedule and join us tonight so that he can set the tone. Mm-hmm. And Bobby, you and I went back and forth about the supervisor of election, so we're going to let him explain what the supervisor of election does and give us some insight on how we need to approach and really get engaged for this 2024 election. So without any further delay, ladies and gentlemen, I present Mr. Joe Scott. What's going on, Joe?
Hey, good evening, Perry. Good evening, Mr. Henry, Mr. Wright. How you all doing tonight?
We're glad you're here, Mr.
Glad
Scott.
you're here.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for
We're
having
good.
me.
We're good.
Now we know you're supervisor of elections, Joe, and we appreciate that and we honor that and we respect that. But we just gonna have a conversation. I want you to know that you can approach this conversation in the comfort among friends.
Absolutely.
and let's have a conversation, not an interview, because you hold some vital information. I want to get that out of the way so that we don't start this thing with some niceties and spend a whole lot of time with that. We got some business to do. So, brother, I appreciate you. We'll get together later for the beer, but Bobby, let's go with these questions.
All right. Well, Joe. I'm sorry. Yeah. Can we call you Joe?
Oh, absolutely. Please do.
Okay. All right, Joe. David and I were discussing some things, and we just found out that this law that's trying to be passed.
Yeah, there's a House Bill 1752 that's being sponsored by a state senator in Gallia, is it? That's trying to limit what we know now as vote by mail or mail-in ballots, with certain circumstances around how it's done and how often it's done. He wants it to be in every election. So, any input, or you want to share your thoughts on where they're trying to go with this?
Listen, so this really all goes back to the big lie. The big lie that something went wrong in 2020, that the 2020 election was somehow stolen from our current president. And since the 2020 election, we've seen these extremists in Tallahassee pass law after law after law to make it harder and harder for people to participate in elections. And they're using the big lie as a pretext for all the folks out there who actually believe this nonsense. Now, we've seen these laws get passed now 3 years in a row. They come in, and our Florida legislature only meets for a couple months every year. But they came in 2021 and they passed a law to restrict our right to vote. They came back in 22 and did the same thing. They came back in 23 and we thought, well, okay, this is going to be the last one. And now here we are, 2024, and another law drops right on a week before Martin Luther King weekend. We've got another law, which is the most extreme. I mean, the most extreme of all of them. Rolling back the right to vote by mail back to something that we haven't seen in decades, which is going from the current vote by mail system back to the old school absentee voting, where you can only vote by mail if you, for some reason, can't make it to the polls on election day. So this is just something that we have to do everything we can to oppose, to make sure this does not become law here in the state of Florida, and that the people of Florida do not lose this right to vote by mail.
Okay, Joe, just give us a snapshot of just what your job entails. Make it as quick as you can, and we're going to go from there. Because
sure. So nothing less than I'm responsible for running all the elections that happen here in Broward County. So that includes everything from the federal level, state level elections, county level, and the municipal elections that happen in our 31 cities across the county. So that's my job, keeping and maintaining the voter rolls. So I'm the guy responsible for making sure the voter rolls stay up to date. I'm responsible for making sure that all the polling places are manned on election day, making sure we have early voting sites that are set up, making sure people get their vote by mail ballots on time and have ample opportunity to return those vote by mail ballots back to my office in time to be counted. So that's really the job in a nutshell.
Right. And as I like to say, Joe, you are the chief administrator, not the chief law enforcement officer, not the chief tally officer. You are just the chief administrator.
True. So when you hear about these new laws being passed, that's not anything that has anything to do with my office. That's coming from our lawmakers in Tallahassee. The lawmakers in Tallahassee, they create the laws. What we do is we execute based on the laws that are on the books.
Right. Now are all supervisor of elections supervisors, are all their jobs the same in every county, or are there some differences?
There's some differences. So there's 67 counties in the state of Florida. You have a number of counties that maybe have like fewer than 10,000 voters living in the county. Here in Broward County, we have more than 1.1 million voters. So we're the second largest county in the state of Florida. We have about 10% of the voters in the state of Florida. So it just creates a little bit of a different dynamic when you're in a large county versus a small county. So yeah, the job could be a little different based on sort of the size of the jurisdiction.
Okay. I have a twofold question. The voter roll, can that be challenged? In other words, are there groups or organizations or citizens out there sending you information saying that these people are not qualified or should not be on the roll? I've been hearing about this in other states, and I wanted to know if that's impacting us here in Florida.
Oh, we have some organizations here in the state of Florida that are very, very active at going around and probably harassing people, knocking on their doors, trying to see who lives in this house and things like that. We have a process in my office about how we maintain the voter rolls. We do a very good job. We follow the law, and we make sure that the laws are faithfully executed. So if somebody has some information, and if they seem to be a valuable partner in helping us determine if somebody legitimately is not eligible, we're always welcome for that help. But we also have some people that are just a nuisance, that are constantly giving us bad information, and I say we treat everybody the way they deserve to be treated. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah. And speaking of the law of those who enforce it, that goon squad, for lack of a better word, that man tried to create. How does that interfere with your role and responsibilities?
So there is an office now in Tallahassee. It's part of, so the chief elections officer for the state is the Secretary of State in Tallahassee. So under the Secretary of State's office, there is now an Office of Election Crimes and Security that was just recently created in the past couple of years. This would be the first big election that these folks are in place. Their job is basically just that. They're here to investigate election crimes and any kind of security issues that might be related to elections. I think it sort of remains to be seen how valuable this group might be. So far, there's actually been a lot of turnover. So they've had a few different people running that office, a lot of people passing through there. I don't think it's one of the sexiest law enforcement jobs out there. If I was somebody who was making a career in law enforcement, I'd be trying to get the fentanyl off the streets or something else. Sometimes I'm just a little curious about who exactly wants to be a part of this election investigation unit. What's the motivation here? But we do have some some folks up there that are doing some work. And at this point, I don't want to jump to too many conclusions about what they're doing and what they're up to. But I think it's something we need to be vigilant about. We need to be watching out, making sure that they're not violating anybody's rights.
Right. And Joe, I'm glad you said that about jumping to conclusions, and you cannot jump. And that's good that we have people who aren't jumping to a conclusion. I don't want to jump to a conclusion, but I do want to connect some dots. That Office of Elections Security, for a brief moment, at least 18 months, was held by Pete Antonacci. And Pete Antonacci, for those who don't remember, used to be the supervisor of elections. He was hand-pointed. He was hand-pointed, right. He was hand-pointed by Rick Scott before he went out and right before DeSantis came in. But DeSantis appointed him as the czar for that group. So, true, we don't want to jump to conclusions, but you can't tell me someone sitting in that pivotal position with that much inherent knowledge about Broward County as its chief supervisor officer isn't going to put that to use. So saying that, just leave it there. But Joe, again, we really want to have you help us understand what's happening in voting right now. We hear all of this stuff. And you just said, people are being challenged. What happens in that challenge process, and are people getting letters? What's happening? Because we need to be able to counter some of this, because we hear it's happening, but I don't hear any counter strategy going on, and we need you here to help us help us with this strategy.
Sure. And I'll tell you that I think all of the supervisors we currently have in office, and I want to emphasize that currently have in office, because we're all up for re-election this year. And this is the first time since 2020 when really for the elections world, everything changed in 2020. Basically because of one sore loser who spent the last 4 years running around the country telling everybody there's something wrong with elections. So this is the first time that a lot of the election officials in Florida are up for re-election. And in some counties, it's not a problem in Broward County, but in some counties, you do have people that are election deniers, people who are really sold on the big lie, who are out there running to become supervisors of elections. So while we have a fantastic group of folks right now running elections across the state, I'm not entirely confident that I'll be able to stand here a year from now and say the same thing. Now, that being said, when you talk about maintaining the roles, I think we all take this job very seriously in terms of making sure that we are not disenfranchising anybody. You know, there's really two sides to this. There's one side of it that if you are an eligible citizen with the right to vote, we want to make sure that we don't take that away improperly. But on the other side of that is that we want to make sure that only eligible voters are participating in our election. So if you are not an eligible voter and we do get information that tells us that you're not an eligible voter, then absolutely we're going to take action, make sure that you are not on the rolls, because we do not want anybody questioning the integrity of our elections by saying that we have people on the rolls who are not eligible to vote. So like I said, we get information from various sources. Some of those sources are more reliable than others, and we treat those sources with the respect that they deserve. And that tends to be kind of the way that I, address these things when they come up. There are certain people that send me information, and every time I look at it, it's some foolishness and some nonsense. And those people get the attention they deserve, just like the people who are consistently on point and are finding things that are legitimate and we need to address.
Right. And right now, I think one of the biggest ones that may escape some people is the fact that now that we have a large population who are considered homeless, even if they don't fit the homeless label, but they are nomads for some reason. And so now so if you have someone who's questioning their residency, how can people help protect themselves against that? Because we know there are some people, if they know Joe doesn't live there anymore, but they know Joe is still active, we can't put anything past people nowadays. And so how can people begin to safeguard themselves? Or even how can we establish some sort of group to help people understand, look, you may be in question. Since we know there's a group that's questioning, can't we come up with a group that says, hey, look, y'all, you high risk. What's going on here?
Yeah, so that's a great point. And especially the homelessness question is a very difficult one because they tend to be a highly transient, highly mobile population. And one thing that we do need in order for you to be on the voter rolls is that we need a valid residential address. We need to know where you actually live, okay? Even if you're homeless, we need to know where you're actually living and where you consider to be home. Home can be a state of mind in some cases, but there's two keys to this for people who are, say, chronically homeless or homeless on a regular basis, as opposed to somebody who just maybe is, out for a couple of weeks and they're going to get a new apartment later this month or next month. So there's really different types of homeless folks. But for those people that are chronically homeless, we're going to need you to tell us that. We need you to tell us. And one of the problems is a lot of people don't want to tell us that they're homeless. And they'll do things, and I'll tell you what isn't going to work that may have worked in the past that will not work in the future, is that you might go to, say, a UPS store or some other mailbox place and get yourself a box there. And then you claim that as your address. And instead of saying it's a PO box, you say it's an apartment, and you make it apartment number instead of box number. That may have worked before. It doesn't work anymore, and it won't work in the future. You really do have to tell us exactly where you're living, and you do have to disclose the fact that you're homeless so that we can look out for you. So that's the one thing, because it does matter if we know you're homeless. Another thing that's important to know about voter rolls is that for almost all voters, except for some people who have special circumstances, it's got to be public knowledge. So if you're going to be an active voter, we need to know who you are. We need to know where you live. And this is going to be publicly available information. There's a lot of folks out there who don't like that. And that's why they don't want to participate. And that's also why they'll try to conceal where they actually live. And that's not allowed unless you have special circumstances. People who have special security concerns, and there's a certain select group of people who have the ability to kind of protect their identity and protect their residence. But there's also a lot more people who would like to do that who can't.
And Joe, just stop for one moment. So people in the witness program.
They will be protected. Yeah.
So they don't have to disclose where they live. They
True. So absolutely. That's why I was kind of alluding to that. There are folks who can keep their information private, but there's a universe of people who are allowed to keep their information private, and then there's a universe of people who would like to keep their information private. And a lot of what I end up dealing with sometimes is folks who fit into that, who are part of that larger group, who would like to keep their information private but don't qualify. And that's a thing that is a thing that's going to cause people to get removed from the rolls. Because when I talk about the whole PO boxes and stuff like that, people using PO boxes as their addresses, that doesn't work anymore.
Is it possible?
Would women in distress be part of that too, Joe?
What's that?
Women in distress?
They absolutely are. So there's people who have had like domestic violence situations in the past. There are a number. So if you believe that you may be somebody who is eligible, that's something you can also reach out to my office about, and we can possibly make you eligible. You just have to follow the proper process, and don't just try to find ways to conceal your identity or conceal where you live and still be on the voter rolls at the same time.
Yeah. And then Joe, there is a provision because, now that, I'm full-time RVN, I fit under the provision of people who tend to vote abroad. So is it possible that homeless people, because one of the options that was given was that I could state my address as the voting location or the central voting location. Is that still possible for homeless, that for someone who wants to register, that they can register at their physical address as the voting center itself?
Right. So you mentioned a different category of folks, which would be people who are living or working overseas, people that be overseas, and there is a separate category for that. And there's a different way that we deal with those folks as well. So those would not be considered the homeless population. Some of these folks who are, say, military or government, or maybe they work for a large corporation and they consider Broward County to be their home, but they don't actually own a home or have any kind of rental contract or anything going on in Broward County because they currently live in another country. That we have provisions in place for them. And I think that one thing that's important is that they're different from the homeless folks. The homeless folks, it is a different story, and it's a different way of dealing with them.
All right, we got some questions coming in from some of our viewers, and I do as well. And I think this falls in the same category of some kind of voter advocacy. So we can pull up the question from the Zeta Phi Beta sorority. Sister says, hello. I want to know, how is information being communicated to the African American community regarding changes in the voting process, along with other processes? Are you advertising in the known Black newspapers, the Broward Times and the West Side Gazette? and any other people? I just
Mr.
added that.
Hey, Mr. Henry loves that question.
He's all going right. I didn't ask you. Thank you, Zeta Phi baby.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. So we're doing everything. I mean, that's part of what this is tonight, you know, as far as being here.
Joe, this ain't paid for. Let's back up for a minute.
So
let's back up for a minute.
We're doing a lot in terms of our communication and upgrading and making our communications better. This year, you're going to see a lot of activity out of my office in terms of basically right now, we're getting ready to put up a whole lot of, billboards across Broward County. We're doing a lot more communication on television, radio, exactly, newspapers. We've got a big media plan in order to just make sure that people are as well informed as possible. Just, in a lot of stuff with these advertisements, you've got to keep it simple. So we just really want people to know, request your vote by mail ballot. We want people to vote early. So a couple of things you're going to see as far as the emphasis that'll come out of my office will be trying to push people to say, hey, go ahead and request your vote by mail ballot. Just go ahead and do that right now. Request it for all the elections this year. And make sure you're voting early. Don't wait until the last day to vote. So that's kind of our communication strategy is going to be to try to get this message and have it in everybody's face, both through visual means in the public, TV, radio, social media is going to be a huge part of it. And that is a big focus of my office, is that communications effort of trying to make sure that people are preparing themselves and are ready for this election.
And I'm sorry. Okay.
Well, I just want to say I've been in your office and I've taken my brother-in-law and other people down there to get them situated, and it was a great experience. But with this advocacy, and I'm like Perry, I'm a numbers guy. We know that the vote by mail roster was cleaned, and they needed to start all over again.
Sure.
What are the numbers looking like? Are we anywhere near comparison to what they used to be?
Yeah. So honestly, I mean, I'm pretty proud of the progress we've made so far. So like you said, there's a total of about 550,000 people in Broward County who have previously requested a vote by mail ballot. Right now, we are sitting at 130,000 requests, so we're only looking at about a quarter of the people who, may have previously done that in the past. I know that a lot of folks wanted to vote from home because of the pandemic, because of COVID-19. And a lot of those folks are going to come back and are going to want to go to an early voting site. So we're actually increasing the number of early voting sites. We also have to keep in mind that we have a bill working its way through Tallahassee that would take effect immediately if it's passed in the Florida legislature this month or next month, that could just upend all of these plans that we're making right now. I would encourage folks, if they haven't requested their vote by mail ballot, to do it now, because the higher we can get that number right now before the legislature votes on it, the better of a chance we have to go and convince the people in Tallahassee not to do this, just by showing the immense interest that exists, how many people want to vote by mail. So I would encourage folks to go ahead and request their vote by mail ballot now, have that request in, and that could end up making a difference. Considering what ends up happening with that law in Tallahassee, whether or not they end up changing the law here in the state of Florida.
Okay.
So yes, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. There are a couple of our viewers. Ellen Brodsky, she's two things. One, she says most overseas voters use their last address as their voting precinct. That's one. The other part of that is, she says, so what do you do to enable a homeless voter to vote who has no address? I remember in the past, some of the Z precincts were established as homeless precincts. So homeless had to have shelter addresses. Now, just before you answer that question, that's one of the things I had. How do homeless people request absentee ballot? I mean, vote by mail ballots.
So the interesting thing is you actually can have a residential address and a mailing address in the system. So, you can have both. So you can have that PO box as your mailing address, but we do need to know for everybody, including our homeless people, where do you lay your head at night? Where do you consider mind, body, soul? Where do you consider home? And that matters for things. There were some different methods that were used in the past. We have different systems that are in place now, but we need to know where you live, and then we can set you up the right way. And that's what's really important, is that we set you up the right way in the system. And that way, if somebody comes and challenges you and it's like, hey, this address we have in here is a park, it's not anybody's house, we go pull you up and we say, oh, that's a homeless person who lives in the park. It's legit. As opposed to it's a multimillionaire lawyer who didn't want to tell us where they really live, which also happens, by the way. So there's, we really need to know, because we have so many different situations going on. And like you said, there are people out there who are challenging these things. So we have to, we have to address everybody based on their circumstances and based on what's actually going on with the individual. So that's why that's one thing I really just want to emphasize, is that if you have special circumstances, you just need to tell us. One thing is, you should trust I ask people to trust me that we're going to do the right thing. So people that are trying to be deceptive, about what their situation is, hey, that's just not going to work. And I mean, the information age we live in today, you're not going to get away with that. You need to be honest and tell us what's going on so we can set you up the right way.
What is the right way? I see one of our viewers asking that
being
question.
honest.
Okay, being honest. Okay.
Just being honest. Yeah, being honest.
Okay.
So whether you are, let's say you're an American citizen living overseas, you need to tell us that. You need to explain that to me. Tell me that you're an American citizen. You work for the U.S. government. You work for ExxonMobil. You work for whoever. You grew up in Broward County. You graduated from such and such high school, and now you are working on an oil rig over somewhere as an engineer, whatever you're doing. You just need to tell us.
Yeah.
And we can make sure that you're good and that we know who you are and we know what the deal is. And if somebody ever challenges your address, you're using mom and dad's house, mom and dad leave, and now you're not there anymore. And then we find out you don't live at that house. We could say, oh, we know what's up with this guy. We know because he told us, and we have the information in our system, and we don't remove you from the rolls because we know better.
Right. Yeah. And like I said, that was one of the cases, as I had an option when we got ready to do this, to just explain, our residency is mobile. It doesn't, and again, it was a straightforward process. And I know for myself, it was just tell us, and so we'll know. And, so we'll see. This will be my first election testing that. So I'm saying it publicly.
Yeah.
So I got it.
Sure, I have a question for you. So where do you vote? Do you? I mean, you're mobile. Do you vote in Florida, or where do you vote?
Yeah, my last registered address is in Tallahassee, Florida.
Okay.
Yeah, right before leaving South Florida, I went back to Tallahassee, registered there, and so I'll vote from the voting center in Leon County.
Okay.
Yeah.
Joe, let me ask you this question. For incentivizing, if you will, homeless people. I'm reading from the Supervisor of Elections office out of, was it Ballot? Where did we get information from? Broward County, one of those counties. It said recruit, hire, and train poll workers. Can that be incentivized by you to hire homeless people to do this?
Anybody who is qualified and who will be able to function as a poll worker, we don't, necessarily, that's not necessarily one of the qualifications that you have to have a home. That's not something we're looking for. We're looking for people that we think would interact well with the public, that would be able to, do the job well. That's what we're looking for. People that are going to show up to their training and be engaged and learn what we're trying to teach them, so that they, that are actually going to show up on time on election morning. That's probably the biggest challenge that we have, is that, we need people that are going to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and be at that voting station by 5 o'clock, to open things up. So we're, just like any other employer, we're looking for the best people that we can get that we think are reliable, that'll interact with the public well, that'll do the job well. That's what we're looking for. So we wouldn't exclude you because you're homeless. But we want to make sure that we are, serving the public as well as we can.
Joe, we know that this upcoming election will probably be, we know it's going to be highly contested. Mm-hmm. There's some belief that it may be close. We don't know. We also know that there's been a lot of talk about turnout among minorities, young people, and we've seen it also here in Broward County to some degree in the last few elections. Now that we have this, I hear everyone say, well, we just need to get out the vote. And that's just this big, I don't even know what that means. Just get out the vote. But if we are going to win this, and I know you have to be careful, what are some of the problem areas you see that we really just need to shore up our efforts on? I.e., people are saying get out the vote. Well, it may not be voter registration. It may be some other things. What is it that you see, without trying to sound partisan or anything else, that people really need to pay attention to in voting now? And
I think we want
to build that up.
Right. One of the most important things we've done that I think should help voter turnout is to create early voting. Whether it is early, whether you're voting by mail or in-person early voting, which you can do it. We're going to have almost 30 different locations across Broward County. The beautiful thing about early voting in person is that you don't have to go to that neighborhood voting center that's close to your house. A lot of folks, especially in our community, are at work on a Tuesday, right? And work may not be close to where you live. And you may not be close to that voting center, but there might be a location during early voting, which starts about 2 weeks before the election and runs until a couple of days before the election. There might be an early voting location that's right by your job. It might be right next to the place where you normally go to eat lunch, or some places where you go to run errands when you're at work, when you're on your lunch break, or before you start your shift, or right after your shift is over. And I think the more we can get people to start considering those options, I think that's going to help us increase turnout. When you wait until the last day, you just don't know what's going to happen. You don't know if one of the babies are going to get sick. You don't know if, you're going to have some errands to run. You don't know if you're going to get caught in traffic trying to get back home. There are so many things that could go wrong when you decide to wait until the last day to vote. So if I think there's one thing that we could emphasize across the board to everybody in our community, is we have got to stop waiting till the last day to vote. And when we do that, we'll see our turnout go up.
Okay,
let me just jump in there. Two things too. In most cases, those lines are shorter. And another thing is, so many of us we have it embedded, especially some of our older voters, that we want to go the day of the election, or we want to be at the poll, on that day. So you're basically speaking to them that we got to really look at changing our strategies.
Absolutely. That's exactly what I'm doing. Because you're right. I hear that all the time. And I always like telling people the story that, that was my mom and dad. I mean, my mom and dad, up until, even just about the time I was running, they would get all dressed up on election day. And that was a big deal for them. That was a big thing to go. I had not just my mom and dad, but I had other friends too. And I was actually literally running for office. And I'm telling everybody, get your vote by mail ballots, go vote early. And I'm like, literally got people that are working for me out there at the early voting sites. And I'm like, did you get your early vote? Did you get your vote by mail ballot? Man, I don't believe in all that. What are you talking about? I'm telling you, you can do it. It works. Like, what do you mean? So I know, because I see it myself, and it's a mission that I'm on. I know you guys can probably see how passionate I am about this, because I see it and I hear it all the time. And I'm just like, where is this coming from? yes, your vote is going to count if you vote early. Yes, your vote is going to count when you vote by mail. Like, come on, who do you think is running the election office in Broward County? You know what I mean? Have you been down to our office? Do you see who's in there? Who do you think is trying to secure your vote? This ain't nothing but us in there. Come on now.
Yeah, well, I'm like your parents. I'm one of those, traditional ones that I have in the past voted on election day. Nothing else. No vote by mail. No early voting. None of that. That was just me. But faith in this system now may push us to voting by mail or early. But here's one of our viewers says, Mr. Noonie Robinson. I'm a diehard proponent of vote by mail. Does the current changes by the Florida legislature require me to request a ballot for each and every election, as opposed to having it automatically sent to my residence as in the past? Hold that thought, Joe. I also want to ask, since we're talking about elections, when are the upcoming elections? So after you deal with Mr. Robinson's question, we can get back to the upcoming elections.
Yeah, sure. So, so the next election that we have coming up right now is coming up March 19th. So March 19th is what's called the presidential preference primary. So for anybody out there who is participating in the Republican primary, there will be a county-wide Republican primary happening on March 19th. Now, beyond that, there are 4 cities that are having elections. So we're talking about Pembroke Pines is the big city, and then there's 3 smaller cities. And, so if you live in Pembroke Pines, there's Lauderdale by the Sea, there's the city of Lazy Lake, and the city of they're gonna beat me up. Hillsborough.
It's a small city.
City Hillsborough Beach. So basically, you got these 3 little tiny cities. The big one is Pembroke Pines. If you live there, you should go out and vote March 19th. So after that, we have August 20th, which is the primary elections that are going to happen for multiple offices at the county level, state level offices, and as well as judges. And some of those type of elections are happening in August. And then November 5th is going to be the big, the presidential election, where a lot of different things on the ballot. A lot of city elections are happening in November as well. So basically you have these 3 opportunities to vote this year. 2 opportunities for the overwhelming majority of Broward County, just August and November, and for a small number of people in March. You can, under current Florida law, which has changed, you have to request a vote by mail ballot each election cycle, which means you can request a ballot right now, and you can request your vote by mails, and it'll cover all the elections we're having this year. What we were talking about earlier in the show is this bill that's in the legislature right now in Tallahassee. That bill would change that in a lot of ways. So I don't even want to get into the details of what that bill would do in the context of this question. To answer this question, if you make that one request today, it covers all your elections this year. And then next year, you'll have to do the same thing, and it'll basically cover you. It covers you until that one would cover you until the end of 2026. So an election cycle is a 2-year cycle where you can request all the elections during that cycle. It's a really great way of doing it for people who want to vote by mail. And if you might have a special election that you may not even know is happening. Somebody resigns or passes away or something like that, which we just recently had in this community. And these special elections pop up, you'll automatically get a ballot if you've got a request with us for all elections during the cycle. Of course, and we hope that doesn't change. We hope this law is defeated in the legislature, and that the process we have right now continues to be the process.
Okay. There are 3 questions. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now I don't know if you can answer these questions. What policies have enabled Republicans domination in Tallahassee? That's 1. No Democratic primary. That's 2. I think there's a lesser known candidate running for What happened?
That's right.
Running for president as a Democrat. Am I correct?
Not in the state of Florida. So in the state of, the parties control the primary process. The Democratic Party in Florida has made the decision not to hold a primary. They have, selected their candidate. So the Democratic Party is not having a primary. With the other question, I think that what was the other one? If you could flash it just real quick. Okay. Actually, I know what it was. It was about what policies have allowed Republicans to dominate.
Gerrymandering.
That's a very important one, Perry. Just hit it right on the head. So we just saw this with the 2020 census and the redrawing of the districts in Florida. And this has happened repeatedly. And, what we've seen happen over this time is that when they draw these districts, they draw the districts in a way that allows, Republican candidates to win. And the way they do that is that they draw districts, they are able to move the lines in such a way. In some cases, these lines are drawn in ways that don't make any logical sense, except for the fact that they're trying to pack as many people they believe will vote Democrat. They want to get as many of them as possible into as fewer districts as they can. So you'll end up having these Democratic districts where the Democrat will win 80, 90% of the vote, right? And then you'll have a whole bunch of districts where the Republicans will just barely win. They'll win maybe 55% every single time. And it's designed. You can kind of look at demographics. You could look at the past practices of how people have voted in the past. Particular neighborhoods vote a certain way, tend to vote a certain way. And people are looking at those maps and they're designing it and drawing it a certain way. Here in Florida, we actually passed a constitutional amendment for our state constitution that says that this shouldn't be happening, but it's still happening anyway. And, we're really not doing enough to challenge that and to push back and to say, hey, we need to have some more nonpartisan type of systems in place to make sure that these lines are drawn fairly. That's not what we have in Florida right now, despite the fact that the people of Florida voted overwhelmingly for this constitutional amendment that said that we would do this. It's a huge problem. And it's something that I wish got more attention than it does. I think people don't, this isn't something that's really top of mind and the biggest focus on people's mind, but it would make a huge difference if we could change this, if we could get our lawmakers in Tallahassee to just follow the Constitution and do this the right way.
Right. And saying that, Joe, with regard to March being an election event, when can voters declare their party? I mean, they have up until when? Let's say,
29 days before.
Up to 90?
29 days before the election.
29 days before the election.
Yes.
Right. So, that means that if you're an independent, you would not have a chance to participate in March. If you're a Democrat, you don't have a chance to participate in March. I just believe that I'm a voter more than I'm a Democrat or an independent. And so I don't want to pass up a chance to vote. So I just want to understand, what do I need to vote in March? So thanks. I got 29 days to get myself ready.
Yeah, Terry. Unfortunately, the state of Florida in these primaries, you can't vote across party lines. So yeah, Joe, we're right at the top of the hour, a little past this. So, but this is such a vibrant conversation that we don't want to cut it short. I even have some additional questions in reference to those that had their rights restored, trying to get their, they vote on, and then this goon squad is kind of trying to scare them out of registering. We definitely got to get you back, but anything you can add to what's happening with restoration of rights? Is that any information that comes through your office?
Oh yeah, no, we're very heavily involved in that whole, that whole situation. We're doing everything we can to help folks and make sure that people are, we want to make sure people are taken care of. It seems that the folks that the goon squad is going after are people who actually vote. as opposed to people, so we are, we have some systems in place where people, if they might not be eligible, we're trying to help flag that and make sure that we don't let them get themselves into trouble. So we're trying to do our part to keep people on the right side of the law. And at the same time, we're working very closely, with our partners in the court system as well to to make sure all that information is right. Because right now it's all about individuals need to know their own status. The systems in Florida are not very good. But I am on the other side of this, like not trying to scare people away, but encourage people to assert their rights. If you did serve your time and you're done and you paid your fines, you paid your restitution, you did everything that you were supposed to do to restore your rights, you should register and you should vote. As long as you are not a sex offender or somebody who is convicted of murder. So if you're a sex offender, if you've got to go check in at the police department and register and tell them where you live, you're never going to be able to vote again. If you're what you were convicted of, if you were convicted of murder, you're not going to be able to vote again. Everybody else, once you've completed all the terms of your sentence, you're out, you've done your probation, you paid your fines, you paid your fees, you paid your restitution, register and vote. It is your right. You should do it.
Okay. Good to know. Again, this is energizing a little bit. We gotta get a little more involved with this conversation as it gets further to this general election coming up. We'll more than likely get some candidates on as well. But Perry, this is your baby.
Yeah. And Joe, I mean, we definitely don't want to just not go through this and not give you an opportunity. As you say, you are a candidate, and so we do want to at least give you the opportunity to let people know who you are as the candidate.
Hey,
I'm going to charge you for that. I'm going to charge you for that. I'm going to charge you for that. Go ahead, Joe.
I was just going to say, I hope everybody saw who I am. I came on tonight as your supervisor of election, so I try to draw the line between whether I'm here as a candidate or here as as your elections official, and I'm here tonight as your elections official. And when I do appear as a candidate, I hope you guys will do the right thing.
Okay. Well, I said that because that was a setup, Bobby. Joe, I do have one question. And again, we know that this election, as you said eloquently, this is about the big lie. And there's so much that people, that's charging this election. That one of the things, and I've always been a proponent of, even with your predecessor and the late Dr. Brenda Snipes, they all knew. I'm going to challenge the supervisor election, but I'm here to help support the supervisor election so that at least someone can say, I validate this for the supervisor election. I don't have a dog in this hunt or whatever, but there is a way. And if I can get you to help me, we'll work on the public side. Everyone, there is a way that you can at least see the number of votes that have come out of your precinct. And really, that's what I say voting is all about. When they say politics are local, it ain't no local than your personal precinct. And if you want to see how the people in your precinct, your neighbors and those around you vote, there's a way you can do that. And Bobby used to hear me say that, and Bobby and I went out during one election. And I showed them this. After the election, there is supposed to be a poll tape which shows you from every machine at that polling location the number of votes for each race. Supervisor Scott, can I please impress upon you to at least make sure that those are available at the polling precincts?
That's the law. Absolutely.
It's the law. Yeah. And a lot of times that has been overlooked. And so I think at a time that is so crucial now when they want to question the vote, I think there's no better place to feel secure than to know the place where you cast your ballot, or the neighbors in the precinct that cast your ballot, what that count was. And you can sleep comfortably. Whatever happens around you is going to happen, but at least you ought to know and feel comfortable what happens in your block and zip code.
And by the way, it's also important to note that, you know, we're in 21st century now. That is being continuously updated on the website in real time. As more people check in, we have precinct by precinct numbers, how many people checked in. You don't get the results until nighttime. Right. But you get the check-ins throughout the day. So the check-ins are available there on an almost continuous basis on the website. Right. For every
and I just think the advocacy on the public side to ensure the accuracy and the transparency. And as long as the supervisor of election is doing everything to help us know what those numbers are, I think that will help. But I do know that even if you do everything you can, if our people don't know, you know, we still run that risk. And I just want to help us not question the work of the good people that I know you work with. And I know a lot of those people, and they put in some hard work. And so we don't want that question.
Yeah, for sure. And Perry, you're right. That's for those naysayers and those voter deniers. Being a former VST operator, that was my job, to give that to the deputy, to paste that up there on that window at the precinct, so that it's public knowledge that these are the number of votes that were cast at that precinct.
Yeah, and I encourage people, if you're a Democrat, find a Republican neighbor, and both of you all go down there and look at it together.
Okay.
Great idea.
All right. Mr. Joe Scott, our supervisor of elections, we certainly appreciate the fact that you joined us, and we want you to come back because there's some unanswered questions still on the screen. So if you go back in the comfort of your home and revisit the show, you can look at those questions and have an answer for them. But two things I want to say. Number one, I said something under my breath as it pertains to Antonacci, who passed away, and how he passed away was reported in the paper. When everybody was in a room meeting, I think he came to his demise outside of that. So I really want to say to the family and to those who knew him, that you truly have my condolences. It wasn't meant for a joke. It was what it was reported as. And I want to say that in clear air. Second thing I want to say is to the Divine Nine and the other organizations that are participating and get out to vote or register to vote, let's not forget the common person. Yeah, we all wear our colors, but there are those who don't wear any colors, still deserve the right to be registered to vote with respect, even if they're not in a home, even if their address is 25 Rock Road under the tree, they still deserve and have the right to vote. So let's remember them. And the other thing I want to say is that the NNPA is coming here this month on the 24th. We will have our midwinter workshop. 2 events will be taking place. These events are by invitation only. One in particular is at the African American Research Library, as it pertains to reestablishing and reaffirming the relationship between Blacks and Jews here in America. And the other is an event at the Holocaust Educational Center, and where we will get a chance to understand and visit that center and be educated on some of the hardships of those who experience what it's like to be a Jewish person in America. Remember the time during the 60s when we marched together, we bled together, and in some cases we died together. We will not be able to accomplish the task that we need to separately. It's going to take a collection of those of us who believe that everybody is worth something and we all have a right to vote. And the last thing I want to say is, I can soon learn to do it if you let me see it done. I can watch your hand in motion, but your tongue too fast may run. For the very best of teachers are the ones who live their creed, and to see people vote is what everybody needs. I love you all. Come on back, please share, and thank you so very much, Brother Joe Scott. Maybe again we can share a bologna sandwich. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Henry, Mr. Wright,
Yeah.
Mr. Busby. Y'all have a great evening, okay?
Thank you.
All right.
Good night.